La alegría y cosa buena, dala tu alegría Macarena, Macarena.
Jon Stewart isn't wrong. The popularity of the Macarena is a puzzle that will continue to mystify us in the years to come. And yet, the will of the people, the cornerstone of any democratic society, cannot be dismissed simply because of painfully white line dancing. The most important expression of the will of the people in democracy is through elections and referendums, because they are the public tools for shaping government. If the eligible voters of a country do not vote, then the validity of elections, and thus the government, is undermined because they cannot be a true expression of the will of the people. So, voter turnout is by far one of the most important features of any truly democratic state.
But America basically invented democracy, so our voter turnout has to be awesome, right? I mean, it's 12 times higher than everyone else's. It's because, freedom, right?
Actually, you're really wrong. In fact, compared to other developed democracies, our voter turnout is pretty pathetic. Voter turnout is calculated by the percentage of voter-age citizens who vote in each election. In 2012, a presidential election year, 121.1 million out of 240 million eligible people voted, for a voter turnout of 53.6%. But in 2014, a year without a presidential election, the US had only 37.6% voter turnout, according to the Pew Research statistics.
When we compare our voter turnout to that of other countries, it's pretty embarrassing. You'll notice that on a ranking of voter turnout in developed democracies, we're pretty close to the bottom. Why is this? Well, 227 years ago, when the Constitution was written, American republicanism was hot new stuff. However, we have long since fallen behind other countries in ensuring easy and equitable access to the ballot box.
The unburdened ability of citizens to vote in elections is one of the most important variables in determining voter turnout, and thus the efficacy of any democratic system. Unless our election process is reorganized on a fundamental level, we will continue to fall short of a true democracy.
Several massive barriers to high voter turnout exist within the American electoral system. Some are archaic but innocent vestiges of simpler times, while others continue the shameful history of intentionally discriminating against certain groups of American citizens.
For example, we vote on Tuesdays. If that seems random and inconvenient, that's because it is. The policy was designed in 1845 to help out farmers with horses and buggies, which is pretty irrelevant in modern times. However, that has not stopped us from continuing the practice.
The problem is that having an election in the middle of the work week all too often disenfranchises people with inflexible work hours who just can't take time off work to vote. Because this most often includes people of lower socioeconomic status, this totally arbitrary decision creates vast inequality in the electorate, giving the wealthy disproportionate power.
Luckily, this issue has several relatively simple solutions. One option is to change election day to a Saturday or Sunday because it would allow for more flexibility for voters. Another proposal by Senator Bernie Sanders would make Election Day a national holiday, which would also work to make polls more accessible to every American citizen, which should be the fundamental goal of any democracy.
Unfortunately, the United States has a long, unhappy history of intentionally creating policies to disenfranchise groups of citizens who legally have the right to vote.
Examples of this include poll taxes, literacy tests, and the grandfather clause. In an effort to reduce discrimination, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which allowed the federal government to regulate elections in states with a history of discrimination. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court recently struck down key sections of the bill, much to the dismay of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, also known as the notorious RBG. In the dissenting opinion that she read out loud to the entire court, demonstrating her badassery, Ginsburg noted that the modern era was characterized by more subtle second-generation policies of discrimination, such as strict voter ID laws, that demonstrate the continued need for the protection of voter rights. Essentially, these new policies, while supposedly protecting citizens from voter fraud, actually have sizable insidious impacts while doing practically nothing to solve the already minimal practice of fraudulent voting. Because of the basic financial requirements required to comply with these laws, ID laws have been proven to disproportionately affect the voter turnout of low-income and minority citizens, according to a study by the Government Accountability Office.
Other policies that affect voter turnout are the availability of early voting and absentee ballots, limited polling hours, and practices such as primary caucuses, which are available only to citizens who can dedicate several hours to the electoral process, and therefore are fundamentally undemocratic. In order to drastically improve our voter turnout, we must strive to make voting easily and equally available to every citizen.